So it looks like boomers and Gen Xers are losing their collective minds again from millennials and Gen Zers. Now, with this new trend called quiet quitting, which is a misnomer in itself because uh, the name in itself suggests that people are quietly quitting their jobs or they're not no longer doing their jobs when it's like not like that at all. So if you're new to this new trend, basically quiet quitting is this idea that people from now on that are practicing quiet quitting that they will do their job exactly what they're hired to, but no more, right? If you're hired as a cashier, if you're hired as a waitress or a waiter, that's all you do, right? Like if you're a waiter, you're not gonna become suddenly a line cook. You're not gonna suddenly go wash dishes. You're not gonna suddenly, of course, this does happen. You're not gonna suddenly become the hostess because that's not what you're hired to do, right? So that's the idea behind quiet quitting, and of course, the boomers and Gen Xers are flipping out because they realize that they can no longer exploit their employees anymore, who are mainly the millennials and Gen Zers. And of course, the media is having a frenzy over this, and CNN being one of them, with the one of the main their main, I guess, anchors like that is just like losing his mind over this because he's clearly either a really old Gen Xer or a young boomer who just can't fathom this idea of like, what? People want to have a life outside of work? Like, that's like blasphemous to them, apparently. And it's absolutely insane because right now, and even during this whole segment, like they even try to bring in a very very young Gen Zer to trying to see basically like throw her under the bus as a person who doesn't really have a whole lot of work experience. I think they said that this particular girl named Paige, she's only she graduated back in 2020, so she has less than 2 years of work experience. And they basically tried to make her seem like the scapegoat or like the poster child of this movement, and tried to throw her on the bus. But luckily, she's definitely very competent, very she carries herself very well, and luckily she wasn't going to be she knew that she was not going to be made a fool of and set this fool in her place. And I think it's just ridiculous that um the older generation want to make millennials and Gen Zers like some kind of enemy of society just because we want to value our lives outside of work. We don't want to define our life by our job. People are not just attorneys, they're not just doctors, they're not just engineers, they're more than that. Work is a means to an end so that we can do what we like to do is not have to work our lives. It's not dedicating our entire life to our corporate world. Like it's bit like I think they did a survey or like um a yeah, I guess you could say survey and research of from medical professionals, and they asked people, especially people who work in hospices, like what is the most common thing that people say on their deathbeds, and pretty much not one of them have ever said, "Oh, I wish I worked more. I wish I spent more time at the office. I wish I took on an extra project," or maybe they would have said invented something, but in general, all of them have said, "Oh, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I spent more time with my loved ones. I wish I spent more time with my kids. I wish I repaired that relationship." It was all things dealing with people, not the workforce. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, the workforce doesn't care about you either. Like, it's absolutely insane to me that people are ragging on this, like, as if, like, like the workforce owes the employer something. It's like, no, if you hired someone to be a programmer and they program for you, what's the problem? Like, you hire them to do a job, and they do the job at 100%, right? Like if they're doing it at 50%, that's a whole nother story. But if they're doing it at 100%, then you really have nowhere to complain. Oh, like they won't help another person with their project. Well, that's not their problem, is it? Like it's could they be a team player, as you so-called call it, and help a person out? Well, that's really up to them. If they want to do it, then then they can. But the fact of the matter is, you're not going to compensate them for it, and you're not going to really. And are you really going to appreciate it at the end of the day? Because let's face it, if there's a trouble within the corporate world or like within the company, and there needs to be layoffs, guess what? Most of the time, 99% of the time, the people laying off all the the underlings, they don't give a crap. Maybe they might feel a little guilty at first. It's like, oh crap, well I just got it's not a fun thing to do for most people. But at the end of the day, you don't really care. Like you put in so much time into hiring these people, trying to make them feel welcome, doing all this stuff. But when it comes down to it, you'll fire them the next day, like if you have to. And most of the time, it's just to protect yourself, right? Because you're not going to really care about if they have bills to pay. You're not going to really care about if they have a child on the way. Your excuse is going to be like, well, they should have planned better. They should always be ready to get fired the next day or something, and it's a complete BS excuse. So I don't understand why older generations are having such a conniption. Well, actually, I can kind of understand why they're having such, a mind blow over this, because people are now finally standing up for themselves and realize that the whole hustle culture and the whole idea of like, I need to do whatever it takes to succeed doesn't actually help. Maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, that actually did work. People were rewarded for loyalty. People were actually rewarded for, going the extra mile. But it's not as common anymore. And you know why? Is because one generation is starting to see every subsequent generation saying things that, well, what I did above and beyond is now the new norm, and therefore the next generation has to do even more in order for my eyes to be viewed, or in order to view like what they do in my eyes to be above and beyond. And we're getting to a point where it's just like, oh, well, if previously working above and beyond was working 45 hours, now it's 50, now it's 55, now it's 60, 70, 65, 70. You know what I'm talking about? Like the bar just keeps getting higher and higher, because the previous generation just keeps setting the bar higher, because they realize like, oh, you know what, like let's see how much we can squeeze out of this person until they break, right? And they're not going to continue to stop until, well, this is basically what happens. Like we're seeing people at a breaking point where they don't want to be slaves anymore, right? They want to do things outside. And, if you want to go watch this video, I'm going to link this article below. But it's absolutely psychotic, like, or at least it's very ridiculous in terms of how this anchor basically wants to paint this generation as lazy, and or my generation and the subsequent one lazy, just because we want to do things that are outside of our 9 to 5. And problem is, like, a lot of these media sources are trying to paint quiet quitting as people who are lazy, as people who are doing the bare minimum, which they're not. They're just doing their job. Like I said earlier, like if you're hired to be a programmer, they are doing the programming job. They're not giving a half-ass work. And of course, like, they have to throw other countries into it. Like, for example, there was a quote by, the Chinese media calling Americans lazy and incompetent. And then I think it was like Bloomberg or someone that was running JP Morgan is like, oh, that's kind of true, because, none of our people want to work anymore. It's like, dude, have you seen what China produces? Look, I'm Chinese. I'm Chinese American, arguably, but I'm Chinese, and I've worked with a Chinese company, and I can tell you this: they're lazy as f too. Okay, like the they're arguably equally incompetent, if not more incompetent than most Americans. Frankly, like, I love working for American companies, aside from like, just being a better moral and better society. Like, what China is known for is mass producing things at a very fast rate, but super low quality. That's basically like their main. I feel like that's like their motto, right? It's like they know how to churn things out quickly, and but 99% of the time it's half-assed. They do have some great stuff. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of their stuff is also extremely crap. Maybe 99 is like low overboard, but I would. But when I worked for that Chinese company, I would argue like most of the tools that they made and a lot of things that they created were just not good. Oh yeah, they churned it out in a week. That's great, but if it's unusable, well, then what's the point, right? Like, and it's and even our top CEO saw like the difference. It's like, what, like American, like our American branch, like you guys are slower at producing things, but everything you make is good quality. Everything works. Versus like our China team is like, they can produce things super quick, but 9 times out of 10, there's like a bug in it, and it's a bug that breaks the entire tool. So it's like, what's the point of having this? So, anyways, like I'm not saying that's every Chinese company. Obviously, like others are great, others are incompetent. Maybe we just hired incompetent people. I don't know. I was only there for about a year, so but either way, that's besides the point, and I digress from that. The point is, like right now, I think employers need to realize that they can no longer squeeze the living crap out of their employees without giving them some kind of compensation. And I'm not saying bare minimum, right? It's like, so many of these companies think that they can work someone for 10 years and then only give them like $1 raise over the course of those 10 years. And it's like, what? You should be grateful. It's like, why? When other companies are willing to actually appreciate their people. There's so many companies out there that do it well, that are actually not trying to exploit the people that work for them, and they should be praised. But these companies that don't do that need to be defamed. They need to be put out in the, like, essentially in the spotlight, to be shown that, hey, you're not doing things that are producing good stuff, and you're being terrible human beings. Like, it's amazing how inhumane humans can be at times. Anyways, that's a bit of a rant on my side, and I just think this whole shenanigans is absolutely crazy. And I'm not, I don't know where the term quiet quitting came from exactly, or who exactly coined it, but I would imagine it's media that's pushing it the most, because arguably the people who are practicing quiet quitting would never call it this. So I think the media is just pushing article after article, news segment after news segment, in order to kind of demonize the whole concept of quiet quitting, by calling it that. They're not calling a spade a spade. They're purposely calling this stuff like the worst thing ever, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that can hurt the most from it, because they're no longer going to have to, they're the ones that are trying to still appease stockholders, right? And like really lurk in, involve or attract, investors and stuff. And if you're not producing as much as you used to be because you were, milking the crap out of your workforce, it's going to hurt their pockets. So I think that, and that's what really all it, dwindles down to, is if it hurts their pockets, they're going to freak out about it. And, now they can't get that second yacht, or now they can't get that summer home in the, in the Maldives or some crap. I don't know. I mean, not everyone's like that, but yeah, I think there's a lot of it boils down to, if it hurts their pockets, then they're going to have something to say about it, and they're going to try to change the narrative on it in order to, for people to start thinking that they're not the bad people, but the people who are practicing this are the bad ones. So, anyways, that's my rant for today. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think of whole quiet quitting. Personally, I'm for it, because you, while like on one hand, yeah, you as long as you're a team player and you're doing your job, no company should arguably really be against this whole thing, because like you hired them to do something that you want them to do. Just because they don't go a little bit farther, it's really something outside of their job description, is really not their problem, it's yours. So that's just me. Hope you guys are doing well. It's almost the end of summer, and hope you guys are staying out there, stay cool. and hope everyone is having a great week. Take it easy.